Okay, we're going live. We're going to go ahead and test audio, make sure everything's working okay. All right. Here's my audio coming in. Just giving us a few moments. Just going to say hello to everyone. Kind of let people filter into the stream. Today's going to be a fun one. Some fantasy regional, or I'm sorry, fantasy battle map terrain. I'm excited about that. Okay. Hello Mira, Shion. Hello Philip. Audio is working good. That's great. I'm just going to let people filter in for just a few minutes. Try to get more people in before we get it started. Thank you, Akira. Appreciate it. Okay. So for those of you who are here right now, I did leave a template on my profile, and unfortunately that template is in regional HD. So for those of you who are following along, you're going to want to go both to your brush tool and stamp tool, go to the catalog, and go to the styles and packs in the left panel and switch over to Fantasy Battlemap 2.0. That's a mistake because I cloned it, but I will not make that mistake in the next terrain video. We'll make sure that that follow along map will be in the style that I'm going to be streaming with. So let's get out of here, press escape to go back, and I'm also going to go to the catalog here, click textures, same thing, just click Fantasy Battlemap 2.0, and every time I refresh the page I'll have to do the same. Again, we'll try not to do that in the next one. Appreciate the understanding. Okay, and for those of you who don't, hello Village Elder Studios LLC. Also, I'm going to go ahead and leave my profile in in the comments. So if you guys can access that, just know I have tons and tons of guides. So go ahead and click the link in the description to go to my profile. Let me know if the link works. Philip will be helping in the chat today, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask him. He is our mod in chat. Okay. Hello, Travis. You can find that terrain template in the description, in the video description below, so don't forget. Okay, well, it is now 10 o'clock a.m. PDT. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so today we're doing terrain in fantasy battle maps, and we're going to go ahead and create each terrain or biome within these little squares here. First thing right away you're going to notice is there's a plus button and a minus button, or a piece of text here. This is just to remind you that anything in the brown is the add mode of the mass tool, and that anything in the green or minus is going to be the subtract mode of the mass tool, and I'll quickly show that. So if I have, let's say, this blue texture right here, and I select FG only, and I go to swipe across, you'll notice that it only goes on the tiles with the brown because this is the FG. And you can switch, by the way, just a quick pro tip, you can switch between the two different layers as well by clicking the 1 key and the 2 key. Let's see here. Oop, I'm not seeing the 1 and 2 key working. Maybe it's my keyboard is off. Oops. Undo that. Alright. We'll go back and repaint these. There we go. So just understand that. And for those of you who just walked in, also remember that if you are following the guide, you're going to want to, again, go to both the catalogs, both the stamp and the brush catalog, turn off Fantasy Regional HD and go to Fantasy Battlemap 2.0. Again, I'll try to make sure not to make that same mistake in the next guide. So let's dive right into hills. Okay, so first thing when you do hills, we're going to go in the catalog. Here we are in Fantasy Battlemap. And we're going to go ahead and choose some cliffs that we want to use. Alright, so here's some cliffs right here. And one of the things you're going to notice about these cliffs, just so you know, is that it has a clipping mask on it. So whatever's on the FG, it's going to pick up that color. You see here that the FG is already that brown color, but on here, because this is the BG right here, you'll see some of that brown right there. If you want to turn off that clipping mask, go to the left panel right here and you'll see a little toggle that says clipping mask. Click that and you'll see that that clipping mask is gone. Okay, so that's important. Now it's okay if you want to have the clipping mask on, that's okay. Just know that what your FG layer texture is. Okay, all right, so we've turned that off and it should be off for all of them now. And making a hill can be a little complex because we don't have a smooth hill. And so we're going to just take these cliff pieces and piece them together to kind of make a hill. And it's going to have to be small because we're working with these small squares. So we're going to size it down. And I know these cliffs have hard edges, so we're going to have to play with HSBC to change that until we get those soft hills. That is in the works, just so you guys know. Won't just provide workarounds, we'll actually add them in the stamps. But until those are added, for right now, this is how you're going to put your hills together. We're going to change things with HSBC. Just going to cycle through. I know it's a little time consuming, but we don't have any composite hills that I know of yet, or cliffs. That's something maybe we should look into. Just as a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to address Philip, as he is a moderator, and he can help you in the chat. Okay. We're going to rotate this and kind of pick it where we want it to be. And one of the things that we're probably going to want to end up doing is select everything, and a nice little trick to make the cliff or these stamps blend in with whatever your texture is. So on the foreground we have this nice brown texture. If I select everything, then go over to blend mode, and the blend mode is basically how the stamp is going to interact with the texture that's behind it. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom where it says luminosity, and immediately you see that it picks up the texture that's below these stamps, and that's a good first step. Okay, and there should be no shadows, just so you know, you don't want any shadows. Then you're going to select everything again, it's still selected, and you're going to go to the advanced settings. It's right here. If you can't see it, use your scroll mouse wheel, or if your monitor is zoomed in too closely, you can zoom out with the magnifier option, and you just click it couple down to zoom out so that you can kind of see it. I've seen that some people have the magnifying too close and then this gets cut off, so that's one way if you don't see it. So advanced settings, and we're going to stick with filters, and that's HSBC. Okay, and we're going to go to the contrast, and contrast, when I slide it down, is going to remove those hard lines like that. Okay, so basically we're removing that hard line that kind of creates that cliff. We want a gradual incline instead of a hard incline, just goes up. So we're going to drop that like this. Okay, and then we're going to also figure out where our light source is. One thing I really like doing pro tip, is using the path tool for a whole variety of things like leaving notes. And because it's a path, you can just select it and delete it. That's super nice. So with the path tool, I'm going to leave a note where my light source is going to be. And I'm going to have it going like this. So this is my light source, and I can just delete it whenever I want it to. Okay. But the light source is basically going this way. And if that's going this way, then this part's going to be light. And if I select these cliffs in the back here, I'm going to make them a bit darker with the brightness, like this. And this is basically the shadow of the hill. This is the dark side of the hill. Okay. Let's go ahead and make this one a little bit darker as well. I can delete this light source, I think, or just leave it over here or make it smaller. Don't want it to take up all my room, so just go ahead, shrink it down, put that in the corner. Okay, so we have our structure, right, or we have our little hill right here, and we're going to do some other things to portray some depth and to add more gradual steps to it. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste one of these like this, and we're going to make it to where, put it up above, to where there's a little bit more to this hill than just one flat, like a plateau. We're going to add some other cliffs up like this to add some shelves or something like that. So you got one that goes here, take another one and put one here. It should be right here, and don't forget about your shadows. So if there's a ledge right here and you put it right there, that it's going to have a shadow on that side. So just kind of keep in mind, that's why you have that light guide there, just to kind of remind you where your shadows are going to be. Once I've kind of finished that, then we're going to group it. And as soon as you group something, you go over to the right panel, or you can select here to go to rename. I just go right into the left panel here. You select it, or right panel. You go down, you'll see the group. And there's a little pen right there. You click that pencil icon, and you just type in hill. And we'll put hill 1, just in case I make any future hills. And you're going to see that this is a group. It's got the group symbol, it's got the name, and it got 11 is the number of objects within the group. Okay. And if you don't want to accidentally select that, you can also press the lock icon. You press escape, and when you drag with the selection tool, you'll notice that I can't select it. It's because it's locked on there. And another really cool thing about this luminosity mode, blend mode, is that I can also change the texture underneath, and it will also change the stamp with it. So I'll give you an example. If I'm not satisfied with this kind of a brown hill, I want to make it green instead, then you can go ahead and just apply like this, and you'll notice that it also picks it up underneath there as well, which is super nice. We're going to use a different texture instead of that green one. Use something a little bit more interesting. We can go through our texture catalog. Just so you know, you can access the brush tool by just pressing the B key. So you can be anywhere in the tool. You press the B key, and then you press the F key to open the catalog. Okay? And you can kind of scroll down and see all the various textures that are available. And we're going to try to pick something that's kind of nice. So we'll kind of look at our options. Take a look. Kind of like this brown one right here. This looks kind of nice. I'm going to go to the advanced settings and size it down, because we are working with something smaller than the whole canvas. We're working with these small squares, so just for the following along, you're going to probably have to resize the texture to it's a bit smaller. I just want to let you guys know. And also, I want to mention a really nice blending technique. So pro tip here on blending techniques, use your edgy brush. That's going to be this brush right here. It's called the edgy brush, and I totally recommend at this scale that you drop how edgy it is, the feature size down to 3, and I also recommend that you drop the opacity down to somewhere around 30 or so. You're going to drop your brush down. Now when you're doing blending, whether it's with a softness on a circular brush or with the edgy brush, you drop the opacity because blending generally takes more than just one stroke of your pen or mouse. Okay? So when you are going to blend a stamp in, make sure that you start with the lower opacity, and you're going to kind of see with the textures there. It's kind of light at first because we have it at a low opacity, and that's fine. At first you want to cover the entire space, the entire stamp, interior and around the edges on top once. That's your first pass. We're kind of getting that color in. The next one is your second pass. So you go over it again, like this. Just go over the whole thing again. And then go over it one more time to where that brown is pretty much all on top of that hill. And a little bit over the edge there. And you're going to also drop down your size and just do a couple single clicks like this. And this is called a transition between this color that I'm using, this brown right here with the green, and between this base texture. So I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but and I'll remember not to forget in the next video, but when you're doing the biomes, and this applies to world maps and battle maps, whatever map it is, you're always going to want to add like a base texture on your map, and that's the texture that all other textures are going to be layered on top of. So pick the right base texture for when you're thinking about your biome. So like with a hill, dirt or grass works just fine because there are hills that are both dirt and grass growing on it. Just like in a tundra, you probably wouldn't pick your base texture to be this green with brown. Instead, you'd pick a snow texture, right? Just like with a desert, you wouldn't choose this. So in the beginning, when you are making your biome, make sure that you apply a base texture that works for that. And it's not going to be the end result. So you're only going to be laying other textures on it. I just want to emphasize that. So here we are. We have our pseudo kind of hill. And next thing is we're going to want to figure out adding more shading, because the objective now is to figure out how are we going to add a shadow. Now there are two ways to do shadows. In my opinion, there's one texturing, which there's a texture shadow, or you can just use a color, black, and just drop the opacity down. When you're shading with your textures, you absolutely want to drop the opacity down. A straight black at 100 opacity is going to just look straight black. You're not going to be able to make anything look in the shadows or anything. So when adding shadows with textures, absolutely you're going to want to drop the opacity. In the next biome, I'll go ahead and use the other technique for doing shadows, which is the path tool. And there's even a third one when you use objects as shadows, and that's very specific. We'll go into that as well. Let's go ahead and pick this shadow texture. If you were to just go into the search field and type in shadow, it's going to be right there. There's another one too. This one's an alpha, meaning that that gray is going to be an alpha or transparent. So we'll pick the shadow, and you're going to want to make sure to drop the opacity. And in fact, you might even want to consider just doing one pass just to make sure. And I don't recommend using the edgy brush for shadows, so switch over to circle and make sure your softness is up. Unless you're making a very, very hard shadow, which means the light source is much closer to you, your shadows will be more diffused or have softer edges when the light source is a little bit farther away. So let's go ahead and do one pass just to see how dark it is. And I think we can make it darker, so we're going to Control Z, undo it, and bring it up to maybe 45, and just apply once. See how it looks. Yeah, that's better. Okay, we'll undo that. So remember where our light source is here, and we're going to paint in our shadow. I'm going to drop the brush down. And what's really nice about this luminosity is that these stamps will also pick up this black texture, so it should blend in well. Put some along here. We're going to put it all along the edge like this. And then we're going to want to figure out the shape we want. Even put some shadow there. And make sure you fill in that entire space of that outline you just made. And so this is that first stroke that you're going to use. So you have some shadow there. You're going to let go with your mouse, take a look at it, and then you're going to do another pass. So you're going to press down again, and you're going to make it to where just the edges, and then go out just a little bit like this. Okay. Put some shadow there as well. And just a little bit of shadow here as well. Want to make sure that looks right. Let's take a closer look. Yep, that looks all right. Okay. So you've got your basic shape of your hill, and if you feel that it's still missing a lot of things, it is. We're just kind of making the hill. We'll put trees and other things. Because it's terrain, I'm not going to bother with even putting any kind of structures, but of course, you who are following along, feel free to add structures if you like. We have some composite roofs and some other stamps that will work great for this little tiny hill that you've got here. Okay, zoom out, take a look. And so the next step now is to add stamps to this to make it look a little bit more natural. Right now, it just kind of looks like a bunch of cliffs pieced together, so with a little bit of shading here. So we've got the depth part down, and now we need to work on the next step, which is to kind of give this a little bit more color and a little bit more of a natural feel. Go over to your stamp tool, go to your catalog, and don't forget that you want to make sure that your Fantasy Battlemap is selected. And so all the options show up. And we're going to go ahead and pick a couple things, like maybe some vines. I think they're just right here. And I'm going to go ahead and place the vines alongside the cliffs. You're also going to want to be careful of what blend mode that you're on. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and make sure that the object shadow is correct. So there are 3 options for shadows. You're going to see none, which casts no shadow. You're going to see object, which is just the default, and you can change those settings there. And then there's layer, okay? And if you want to know where to access the layer shadow, you go to scene settings. You're going to see right here layer shadows, and you'll be able to control that here. Think of the layer shadows as kind of a global shadow, but just know that layer shadows will not be cast onto other objects. That shadow will only be cast onto the BG or FG layer. That's the background and foreground layers. So kind of keep that in mind. Only object layers have the ability to cast a shadow onto another object. So kind of keep that in mind. All right, and we're going to go ahead and zoom out real quick and remember where our light source is. Okay, we're going to select it, go to object, click this little option right here for shadow, and the blur is basically going to control the size of it. If you were to go down to just 1, then it would be a very, very hard shadow, and 0 is basically no shadow. So keep that in mind. And your X and Y offsets, which is going to be right and left and down and up. So keep that in mind. Okay. And we're going to go a little bit to the side because I see where my shadow, where my light source is, and then bring it down like this. And you can control the opacity of the shadow with this slider here, and of course you have your color options and your swatches. I'm going to drop the opacity down of the shadow to where it's not too much. Okay. All right. And I'm just going to line along the cliff here. Okay. So there's just some vine work growing along this hill, which is kind of nice. And if you're going to put one on this side, which is the shadow of the hill, don't forget that when you place it, you're going to also have to factor in that it's in the shade. So part of it, so you can go to filters, the brightness setting, and I'm just going to do one at a time so I can have a little bit more fine-tuned control over it. So the slider, so this is nice with clicking the buttons there. And we'll leave it at 90, just a tad bit darker there, and add another one right here. And it should keep the same setting from this one. You might have to increase the brightness if you want to put more back on this side, or because there's object memory, if you just select it and then go back to object, it's going to have the same settings as the stamp that you just selected, okay? That's super important, so keep that in mind. Okay. So we've added some vine work. The next step is to add some trees, bushes, maybe a little bit more grass. Nice, the forest stuff is all at the very top of the catalog, so it's extremely useful. We're going to go with these kind of coniferous trees here, and we're going to place a couple to the side, and maybe one here, and one over here. And you can put a bunch of bushes on top of the hill. So let's also do that. There's some bushes right here. Some are bushes, some are trees. Let's go with these summer bushes here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and place a couple on top of the hill. on the bottom of the hill. And if there's any in the shadow, again, remember to drop the brightness in the advanced settings, okay? And we're also going to do what I call this monotony of size problem, where most of these are relatively the same size. And so the way that you kind of fix that is by dropping the scale down. So you've placed the big ones that you want. You place all those at once, and then you drop it down. Drop the size down to where it's nice and small. And you just place a couple. And I like to place them around the big ones, just to kind of give it a little bit more transition between the back or the BG texture or whatever this texture is, the FG, sorry, and these smaller ones. So it's slowly coming to life. You've got your nice hill here, and I think the object shadows are somewhat correct. They could probably go a little bit down a bit more. We'll select these. I think these shadows are a little off. We'll go over and move them down and then a little bit this way. Okay, there we go. So there's our shadows. That looks about right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete the light source. It's pretty well established now where the light source is, because I can see the shadows from all these other stamps. So you can copy paste it and move it over to the next one, which is what I should have done. All right, so the last bits that we're going to put together is maybe adding some vine work, different from the one we had. There's these grasping vines right here. These might look kind of nice. I'm just going to put this on top of the hill like this, and we're going to make sure that it's a layer below this bush, because a bush is obviously higher up. There we go. I kind of like that. I want to make sure that it's just on the edge there. So you got a nice vine work there, and there are these smaller pieces that you can kind of put on there. And don't forget to drop the brightness when you do that. Anything in the shadow has to be dropped. The shadow of the hill has to be dropped. So let's take a look. That looks fine. And we'll go ahead and add some last stuff. We're going to go ahead and put in just some more grass in here. Okay. Just going to use a soft brush. I'm not going to use the edgy brush right now. And basically what I'm doing is just trying to break up some of that brown. And then we'll be all done for that one. And I can't wait to get some more appropriate hill stamps. Okay, just kind of breaking up that brown. There we go, looks good. Okay, let's take a step back. All right, we got our hill, we've got our shadows. Shadows look good. Okay, light source has been established. All right, 117 changes. We should totally save. I definitely recommend that you save often. Okay. Okay. So for those of you who are using Chrome, just want you to know that Chrome has megabyte limits on its tabs. So what happens is that the more options or the more things you add to this change history here, this is called the change history or change log. The more changes you have in this change log right here, the more you're going to reach that MB limit, that megabyte limit that Chrome has on its tabs. So you definitely want to save, and then you definitely want to do the refresh, because the refresh basically clears this change history. Okay, so when you reopen the map, that change history is gone. So it's important that you save and refresh. Save often for sure. That way you keep your work safe. If anything happens where it says Inkarnate's offline, or if you're struggling and having a difficult time with our server, the best thing you can do is just immediately run over here to this menu right here and click Save Offline Backup, just in case the save fails, okay? The Save Offline Backup, right? If I was to click this Save Offline Backup module pops up. You're gonna read this little tidbit here, and you're gonna click Backup, and it's basically going to save it, and then once you go back to your maps, this option to upload a offline backup will be available, okay? So if you ever run into save problems, do that offline backup, okay? Save your map and save your work. So save often and refresh. Definitely save, definitely refresh after you've worked on the map for about an hour, okay? About when that when that time comes, you're definitely going to want to refresh. Okay, let's jump to the next one because that took just a half hour. I was hoping it would take a little bit shorter. Let's go move on to Tundra, and we're going to go into the catalog. You can press again the B key and then the F key to go into catalog, and we're going to want to pick snow. I'm going to go ahead and pick this one. I'm also going to be aware of what size it is. I think the original size is fine. Just so you know, this is in the BG, as you can see that negative sign, so switch over to BG. And quick way to fill up your canvas, or whichever part of your canvas, is with using this rectangle shape right here. And you're going to notice right here that there's an apply button. Again, make sure you have the right layer selected. This is the BG. And if I was to just click apply, oopsie, we're going to make sure we're at 100%. Don't forget to do that. Boom, there you go. So you have your base texture, excuse me, and you can rotate it too if you don't want to. If you don't want it to be perfectly lined up with the line work, so I'll just go ahead and do that real quick. So I've rotated it. Okay, so now it's a little bit going to the side, which is kind of nice. Okay, so in our Tundra, the first thing we're going to do is, you got to know is that tundras are not actually, there's not a whole lot of vegetation in a tundra. There are trees, and when you're adding your trees, you just need to add sparse amounts of trees. There are large forests, I believe, near tundras, but for the most part, it's generally flat and there's not a lot going on. So this is kind of an easy one. Take a little bit shorter time than the first one. You're going to jump over to your stamp catalog. That's with the O key. Press F key to open the catalog. And there should be some snow trees right here. We're going to add more snow trees, don't worry. Okay. Basically the same tree as this with some snow on top of it. We're going to go to layer 1. Remember that. I'm going to go ahead and place just a couple in a bunch, and I'm also going to turn off the object shadow. So you select everything here. Okay, I'm going to go to none. I'm going to show you a whole different trick when it comes to shadows. So let's just first make kind of our cluster here, put some things together. Put one over here, maybe drop the size, put another one over here. Okay. And if you're not satisfied with how much snow is on it, you can click this saturation, and it's going to go ahead and drop much of the color. Or you can just do that same old trick we did with those cliffs. Go to luminosity, and it's going to be white. And if you don't like that, you can also drop the contrast down to remove some of, or sorry, bring up the brightness, my bad. There we go. Bring up the brightness a bit. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm actually okay with it being as it was, just like that. Okay. So this is kind of an easy one. Just put some trees around, and if you feel like this is a bit too big, you can drop it down. I'm going to show you a quick shadow trick. Okay, so you're going to go to your stamp catalog, press O, then F, check your left panel. I'm just going to go ahead and deselect Fantasy Battlemaps and go to Fantasy Regional HD. Okay, so you're going to click that, and then you're going to click these trees right here, a pine tree. Okay, you're going to make it nice and big like this, and then you're going to rotate it, and you're going to figure out where your light source is. Let's just say that it's up in this corner again, but you can have it anywhere you want. And you're also going to want to make sure that it is a layer below, like that. Okay, so it's a layer below. That looks good. Okay, so you at least see some of the trunk. Know that this time of day is going to be either very, very early morning, or it's going to be very late in the afternoon when the sun's coming at sunset, because the farther away the sun is, so the closer it is to the horizon, you're going to find that your shadows are going to be elongated and stretched out. You'll see in the hills here, the sun is a little bit higher up in the sky because the shadow is not huge and stretched out a long way. So just keep that in mind. Now with your pine tree still selected, the HD one, you're going to drop the brightness all the way to 0. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead up to your opacity slider. And you can go ahead and click D or E to go up or down, or you can just use the slider bar. And you're going to go like this. You're going to drop it down, and you're going to want to make sure that you remember that opacity, that 27, that's where it's at. We can take it down to 25 just so you can remember the number easier. That all the other shadows have to be of that same opacity, okay? So keep that in mind. We're going to go back, and we're going to go ahead and select that thing, and here the same settings. You can go ahead and just change the scale down, and we're also going to rotate through the options. So let's go ahead and skip through, and we're going to put one here, and let's go ahead and change the scale to it's a little bit bigger and put one there, and we're going to also put one in here, and then another one right there should be okay. And it's okay if there's overlapping shadows. I don't think that's a problem, but for some people that might be. Okay, so now you've got this nice elongated shadows. Your sun is over here, your light source, casting these nice long shadows. Okay, and we're also going to want to break up a lot of this, because I look at this snow texture and it does seem to be all rather uniform, so we're going to want to change that up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select everything and maneuver it where I want it to be. I'm going to go back to the brush tool, the B key, F key to open the catalog, and there's this nice snow-covered forest floor right here. So we're going to go ahead and use that, and we're going to have to also think about resizing it, because probably these artifacts, these trees right here, might be slightly bigger than these trees. So let's just take a look at verify. Okay, I want to scale it down to where you think about the trunk size is right. And if you see kind of this tiling going on, the way that you fix that tiling, or an easy workaround, is to rotate like this. Now you're still going to see some minor tiling, but it will break it up just a little bit more, so keep that in mind. And we want to make sure we're selected the right layer. We want to be at the right size. Here we are, that works fine. We're going to go back to filters. Okay, let's go check out our size. We're going to go over to our circle brush, don't forget that. Go to our settings. How big do we want the brush to be? Okay, let's see here. Softness up, and drop the opacity, I would recommend. Okay, and we're going to do one stroke and just kind of see how it looks. And we're going to create some parts that stick out a bit. And I definitely recommend putting them close to the trees. Okay, way out there in the middle of nowhere doesn't make much sense, but if you have these fallen trees here, it's a good place to put them. Definitely don't wholesale cover the whole thing. I don't recommend that. And definitely decide to pick a place where it's at 100%. So you just keep doing it until it hits 100% in that section. Okay. All right. That looks pretty good as is right there. Okay. Go back into our textures, put some more things together. There's this nice snow alpha texture right here that looks nice. We're going to place just some of that at 100%. I'm just going to place some just to see what it looks like at first. Yeah, that looks all right. What we're trying to do is break up a lot of this same kind of continuity in the snow mounds here. Also, it needs to be re-rotated. I can kind of see that this is the shadow of where these snow drifts are. So we'll rotate the snow to where that works out. Okay, so let's rotate. The shadow is right there. Okay, that makes sense. We'll reapply it. Okay. And that means we're going to have to do some of this texture over again. Keep that in mind. There we go. That shows a little bit more continuity with the lighting. So we've got the snowdrift shadows with these shadows, so that works out good. And we're going to have to go back over it with this texture again, just so you know. Okay, we're going to drop the opacity down. Like I said, just make sure you put it at kind of the base of where the trees are at. Okay, that looks fine. And then take that alpha snow texture and just kind of apply over here to the side. And it can probably be even bigger, I'd say. Let's take a look. That looks about right. Let's go ahead and apply it. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. In fact, we can go to 100%. Just there we go. Much better. Okay. All right, let's step back, take a look, see what other things we want to add. So far that looks good. Let's go ahead and also add a ambient, what's called ambient occlusion. Okay. Now I know I said to turn the object shadows off, but to make these stamps pop out from here just a little bit more, we are going to add an object shadow. Okay. And it's going to be small. So we're going to drop the blur down. You want to be able to see it, make it noticeable. We're going to make it somewhat dark. And I am going to go ahead and move it just a hair. We're going to create this ambient occlusion, which is basically just this silhouette shadow that is going to be around these stamps just to kind of help them pop out a little bit more. It's called ambient occlusion. Okay, let's step back, take a look. Kind of a simple, but these principles, the trees, there's not a lot of grass that's in a tundra. Most of it's just snow, so it's kind of a simple biome to make. We're at 53 changes. We're going to go ahead and save it for now, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next biome. There's a lot of different details and things that you can add. Don't forget, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask Philip in the chat. He is our moderator. Okay, we've got hills, tundra, and we're going to move on to forest. Forests are super easy to make, in my opinion. You just need to put down a bunch of trees. So first, we're going to want to pick the appropriate texture. I think this brown is going to be just fine. That's not a problem. If you don't want that, you want to use a different texture, then we can go check out some of these forest floor ones with a lot of this stuff that's on the ground. Go ahead and size it down, and again, rotate. Okay, and make sure you're set to FG because we've switched over to the brown square. Use the rectangle brush. Looks like it kept, or a rectangle brush, yeah, shape. And it saves the shape that I had last. So you press enter. You have that nice forest floor right there, so that's kind of nice. The next step is to go ahead and pick some trees that you want. That forest floor is a little dark. Don't forget, you got to switch over to Fantasy Battlemap 2.0. That forest floor is a little dark. Okay, so, and if it's that dark, it's probably going to be dense. I'm going to go ahead and use these summer trees. They're a little bright, and they should pop a little bit more on that dark texture. Just place, for now, just a couple trees. Don't go crazy. Just place a couple for now just to kind of get a sense of the size right. Okay. Go ahead and drop them down. Now if your forest is going to be absolutely massive, then you're obviously going to want to change the texture to fit. Alright, so let's say that your forest is going to be just a little bit bigger. Okay, and I absolutely recommend that you make what's called a glade. A glade is an opening in a forest that has sunlight obviously going into it. It's called a glade, and that's where you can fit some nice POIs, like let's say a temple, a ruin, a pit, a cave entrance, whatever you want. So glades work really, really nice as a negative space for you to put something there. So we will make a glade, and I am going to actually switch the texture too, because I'm not satisfied with that. For now, I'm going to just stick with that simple texture, just so it's easy to work with. So we have the simple texture here. We're going to click the tree so we have the same settings. And I'm just going to go ahead and click, hold, and drag, and kind of create this negative space. And make a little entrance so people can get into it. But everything else is going to be covered, so I'm going to just cover this up. Now, if you don't want a glade, one thing you can do with your forests, this is specifically to Fantasy Battlemap, is that you should know that forests are generally much thicker in their interior. That means we're into the center. So the closer you get to the center of the wood, it's going to be the most dense. That doesn't mean that you can't have glades, just kind of a little tidbit there so you know that when you're making your forests, before you make your glades, make the center part very, very dense, and then make the outer part kind of sparse, okay? And when you're doing it too, I'm just going to go over here just a bit, add just a few small trees as stragglers, okay? Just to keep that in mind, some small tree as stragglers out on the periphery or the outside of where your forest ends. So wherever your tree line is, add a couple trees to break up the tree line so it doesn't look really awkward. Okay. So I'll delete these. I just want to make sure you know that. I am working with some small spaces, unfortunately. Okay. So this is basically your forest. Obviously it would extend further out, but just for the purposes of fitting into the square. So you're going to do some texturing. That's the first thing you're going to want to do after you've added your trees. And you're going to want to add a texture that's going to be below these trees. I usually like to use dirt. That's just kind of my personal preference. Okay. So you can use that edgy brush if you want to do some blending. Don't forget to drop it down to 3 to also drop the opacity and to drop the size of the brush. Okay. And when make sure it's also set to the right layer, so it should be FG, okay, because this one was BG. And you're with one stroke, you're just going to go down like this. And you're just going to start at the entire base of where the trees are, which is adding just some brown. This is just our first swipe, because don't forget, you'll do more than one pass when it comes to blending, so keep that in mind. So here's kind of our first pass, and then you're going to do a second pass, so do it again. All right, and also keep in mind that where the forest is most dense, there's going to be the most shadow. Okay, so these openings in here, you're going to want them to be fairly dark. You can do that with your shadow texture. Make sure you drop the opacity down, okay? And you just kind of fill it in into here to make these spots just a little bit darker. This would be a bit darker. This already looks pretty dark here, so that's good. Maybe darker, make it darker there. Okay, just kind of keep that part in mind. All right, and the next part, we're going to add some dirt, and we're going to do something a bit different. One of my favorite textures is in the orc pack, orc textures, and there's one right here. It's called dry grass. This is a super nice texture. I really like it. I'm going to drop the size so more of it is visible in my little square. I'm also going to rotate it. Okay. All right, and I'm going to bring my opacity up quite a bit. And just in this negative opening right here, I'm going to kind of create like a path, like this. And it's just your first pass. We're going to do another one just to get it a little bit brighter. There we go. Nice to get these nice artifacts onto the map. Okay. Next step is to do a little bit of decorating. So these trees are on layer 1, which means we're going to add some bushes or some other stamps, and we're going to put them below, because we're going to make some small stuff. There's some lake fawns here that might look nice. There's some ferns. Let's go ahead and use these ferns. I like these. And we're also going to make sure that they're a layer below. Put a -1. And I'm probably going to change the brightness just a hair. Okay, and you're just going to go ahead and single click, place them around, and you're going to stick with this size, which is 43 for now. And we're going to do that monotony of size issue again. Just place them around, and then we're going to bring it down to, let's say, 30. Let's see how big that is. Oh, I think we can go even smaller. Okay, so some small ones. Okay, there you go. It's a bit blurry. We're using this in 2K. Streaming in 4K is extremely taxing. Okay, you've added a couple ferns there. So now you're kind of adding a little bit more life to your forest floor. And we're going to add a couple more things. Let's go ahead and add some fallen logs, some stumps. So we're going to add a little bit more character. This glade, we can add a little bit of character to it by putting in some stumps. Let's put one right in the center, and maybe even put a second one right there. Okay. Put it over here. All right, and then we're also going to, oopsie, I just noticed something. I forgot that one of my ferns is actually covering this, which is actually okay, because grass and plants do grow on stumps. If it was a fresh cut, think about this with your stumps. If it's a fresh cut, then you're going to see that, you know, you could just place the stamp as is. But if the cut was a while ago, the tree was cut a while ago, You can add some things on top of it to make it look like there's been some growth. So vines are a great one. You can use vines. There's some ones that are a bit small and work kind of well. So you can put some vine and make sure, again, it's on the right layer. Let's keep going through our vine options. Make this one a bit smaller and put some vine on here. Okay. And this just kind of represents that these trees were cut some time ago. All right. And you can also change the blend mode to luminosity if you wish. Luminosity will also pick up some of that green texture underneath, right? And it will look like there's some moss growing on it. So keep that in mind. Luminosity blend mode, can't stress it enough. Favorite blend mode, works absolute miracles for so many things. Maybe I can make a blend mode guide in the future. Maybe that would be helpful. Okay. Now we're going to add just a couple more items, okay? I think just one more should be enough. I'm going to put some fallen trees in. I think that would be kind of nice. So you have this fallen tree right here, and we're going to take it down to layer 3, okay? And I'm going to put it underneath the trees, but have some of the branches coming out, like that, okay? And same thing, I'm going to do that again. Let's put maybe more of it in this time. Maybe one fell this way, so let's put that there, okay? We'll move it away from that, so it's just in between there. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we got. Yep, all right, there's your forest. And you can go with as many details as you need, so that's up to you. And again, the shadows change. I've showed you a couple methods of shadowing. I've showed you right here in Hills that you can use the brush tool. If you're not satisfied with the brushing the shadows of trees, or if you don't want to use the object shadow, you can use other objects. I can't tell you that every single object that's in Fantasy Regional is going to work as a shadow, but you can make a lot of things work. I just want you to know. Okay, and then again, here for shadows, I just use the object shadow. It's just kind of easier that way. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what we've got so far and what time we've got. Sweet, 10 minutes. So let's try to get this next one swamp done in 10 minutes. I'm gonna save real quick, okay? All right, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Philip. He is our moderator in the chat. Okay, also, for those of you who don't know, you can find my profile in the chat as well. You're gonna see it under the Inkarnate tag, that yellow tag. You'll see up at the top, it's like the 5th or 6th comment down. You'll see the link to my profile, and on my profile I have so many guides, okay? So if you feel like this video is lacking, or there's some things that you want or you didn't get a chance to do, go to my profile, check out the guides. Also, feel free to leave feedback and comments and suggestions for future videos. All this month, it's going to be terrain, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. Next month, we'll go with a different theme. So let's jump right back in. Hills, Tundra, Forest, and Swamp. All right. So we're going to go into the brush tool, B key, then F key to open up the catalog. And we're going to make maybe a mangrove would be kind of nice. A mangrove is a type of swamp. So, and a mangrove is where basically the ocean reaches into some land formation where the trees, and specifically a mangrove, by the way, not necessarily a swamp, but the mangrove has trees that grow into the ground and there's no soil really. Most of it is just roots and water, though there is a little bit where trees' roots create enough roots where grass can grow, so there is some of that. So let's go ahead and first kind of pick the watercolor that we want. I'm going to choose this water right here. It's under water textures. If you want, you can just click water in the search field. All the options are going to be there. There's even some nice sewer ones. So let's just choose this one. I'm going to choose green. I kind of like that color. You can pick any texture you want, but I'm just going to choose this one, okay? And we're going to make sure, again, that it's on the right layer. Since it's going from FB to BG to FG to BG, so this is obviously going to be the background, and you can test that if you want by just doing a swipe. You can see that it is. Opacity all the way up. And we're going to go ahead and use this square brush, and we're going to fill up this entire space. Okay, so remember, when you're doing your biomes, pick your base texture that you want. So all other textures are going to be on top of this texture. Just a quick reminder. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead into our catalog. You just press the O key and then press the F key. Excuse me, to go into the catalog. Sorry, we're going to go to stamps actually. So O key, excuse me, and then press the F key to open the catalog. Now, I do not think there are any necessarily specific swamp trees that I know of, but making your own trees is actually super easy. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and click this dead tree, or just tree, I think it's just called, like this. All right, and we're going to go pick the size that we want. I'm just going to make one cluster of trees that has enough grass and stuff connected to it, so it's like, think of it as kind of an island made of roots from these trees. So I'm just going to place one for now, and then I'm going to go ahead and just pick all the ones that are kind of dead like this. These work really well. Okay, so they are technically without leaves, but you can add your own leaves. So one of the great things about these dead trees that don't have foliage is creating your own. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select all of these real quick and go ahead and make a hard shadow like this. I'm going to go ahead and project it. So you got your shadow here, and I'm going to drop the opacity down, or I can just turn it off, which I think I'm going to do that instead, because we'll figure out shadows after we put foliage together. Okay, let's go ahead and drop the size down because we want some space. So most of this mangrove is going to be water. Okay, and let's go ahead and create one tree first. So here's your tree right here. Okay, it's on layer -3. Remember, there are 11 layers, right? There's layer -5 to layer +5, so that's 11 layers. So let's go ahead and put it on layer 1. We'll put them all at layer 1. Okay, and I believe layer 1 is the default layer for all stamps. So if I press X like this, I'm sorry, it's 0. The default layer is 0, so keep that in mind. And we're going to go to the catalog, O key, F key, open it up, and we're going to go ahead and pick what we kind of want. I'm going to go expand all. Okay, and we're going to figure out what kind of stamps that we want to use to decorate the trees. I'm going to choose this forest floor plant, and I'm going to make sure to turn the object shadow off, so just no shadow whatsoever. And remember to bring it up a layer. I'm going to go layer 2. Okay, and I'm going to just see how it looks, scale it down, and just kind of add a couple on top like this. Okay, so you got some trees, create some foliage. All right, there's your foliage right there. And I definitely recommend that once you've done that you absolutely group. Okay, this way you won't accidentally just select one of those stamps. Okay, and also, as always, immediately rename the group, because when you're in this long list, and let's just say even if you were to go to the select tool and say only groups, you'll notice that only groups are here. Let's just say that you had 30 groups, you wouldn't know. You just say, well, I'd have to click through this list of groups. Instead of doing that, just rename it immediately, okay? So just call it like a swamp tree or mangrove tree or whatever you want to call it, okay? Entirely up to you. All right, so you have your first tree. We'll deal with shadows later. Let's just go ahead and put each tree together. Make sure again that you select all. Here we go. And we're going to go ahead and add the next one. We're going to drop the size down so it's appropriate. Add a couple, maybe one in the center there. Oopsie, I think I'm at the wrong layer. Let's go ahead and click all those and put them at layer 2. Okay, there we go. Just go right back. There you go. And then you select one of these bushes, object memory, boom. Okay, there you go. Don't forget, group, rename. And it's okay if you call it Swamp Tree 1 or you just want to call them all Swamp Tree. Your naming convention is up to you. Okay. We're going to make one more tree, and then we can just copy and paste these groups by just rotating them, rotating some stamps, and they'll all look like different trees, okay? So here's our first one. Our last one, sorry. We're going to go back to the catalog, click this stamp, make sure it's at layer 2. It's super, super important that you pay attention to what layer your stuff is on, otherwise you're going to get some pretty funky results. Okay, and again, the beauty of doing the foliage on your own is you can choose any stamp you want. You can choose a flower, a bush, whatever you freaking want, so you can kind of make your own cool trees. Again, group, rename, swamp tree, and there's 3 of them, so, and you're definitely not going to want to do that, so go ahead and click that, press enter, boom, done. Okay. So we have our 3 variations of swamp trees, and we can copy and paste them as we see fit. Make sure they're all in the same layer 2, layer 0, layer 0, perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and put these together. We're gonna put one there, one there. This one's lower to the ground, so let's put down a layer, put this one up, perfect, okay. And we're gonna copy, so Control C, Control V, all right, perfect. And now you've got all these trees available. So that's kind of nice. Put one there. We're going to rotate them. We don't want them to be exactly the same. Rotating them makes them look like different stamps. So we'll add a couple there. Let's just keep adding a couple more. Add one over here. And let's rotate it to make sure it's not looks exactly the same. Control V. Add another one on there. Let's say it right there like that. Okay. Oopsie, just this one. There we go. Bring this one out. Okay. So the way I'm going to see it, just to envision it, because all of you are probably going to put some form of civilization on here. So leave a little bit of space here in this negative space for boats to float around, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. And so we're going to do one more thing that's going to be really helpful, because we still have a problem with depth, I feel. Like, it doesn't really look like these trees, their trunks are underwater, right? That their stuff is underwater. So how are we going to fix that? Okay. So we're going to go use this exact same stamp right here. All right. Like this. So you have this big stamp, and you're going to put it on the lowest layer, -5. You're also going to make sure to turn off your object shadow. You don't want any shadow of any kind. And we're going to go right over to that nice luminosity trick, okay? So you're going to see it picks up that background texture. That's great. And again, you want it to be at layer -5. Don't know why it didn't. You're also going to want to drop the opacity, okay? Because this water looks a little green and murky. So dropping the opacity is going to kind of make it look like it's a little more underwater. And we're going to make it somewhat big so that you can see some of this of the stamp underneath. So kind of keep that in mind. So you put that underneath like that. Okay, so it sticks out. Oopsie, put it back over here. And let's go ahead and do that for all of it. So if you edit a stamp that hasn't been placed yet, all the other stamps will follow suit. I think except the blend mode, I'm not sure, I'll double check. So we've got it set to luminosity. We turn off the object shadow. Okay. And let's go ahead and add more. Let's put it in here, one right there. Okay, like that. Add in another one. Let's make sure it's just the branches. Don't do the one that has the foliage like this one. Don't do that. Just the foliage, or just the branches. Okay, one there and one right there. Okay, there you go. All right, so now you can kind of see the under the branch work a little bit, so that's kind of nice. That works out fairly well. There's still a lot more to do. We also need to factor in where we want some water flow to be, where shadows are going to be, and we're going to get to all of that, don't worry. So we also need to figure out where our light source is. First, let's go ahead and create more depth in our water. You're going to select the same water texture we just picked right here, right? And then you're going to go to filters, you're going to choose your brightness, and we're going to drop it down. And what we're doing is we're going to say that where this negative space is, and here where there's no branches, it's going to be shallow or going to be darker. And the way to show more depth in water is to just pick the same water texture that you have, drop the brightness, and then just kind of fill in these spaces. I don't personally recommend using the edgy brush. When you're painting your water, I totally recommend the shape, the circle brush. I definitely recommend you drop the opacity and make it a small brush. Okay, and we're going to do one stroke just to verify to see what it looks like. That looks a little dark. So let's go ahead and undo that and just make it just slightly brighter. Okay. Go back to filters and let's go take it up to 70. Okay, there we go. All right. And we're going to apply. There we go. That should be fine. Just in the dark spaces. Oh, don't really want to hit those branches, okay? Because this kind of represents that darker water. And we're still going to add some waves because we do need to create a sense of flow to the water, motion. So we'll be adding that as well. Okay. And you can even do it again in the kind of the most negative parts, just to add some transition. Okay. So now we've got created some water depth. Excuse me a moment, take out a sweatshirt, a little hot. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Don't worry, we're gonna add shadows. So if you're kind of wondering, like, when do we add the shadows? We will, don't worry. Hey Art, thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some tricks. I'm gonna show you guys some things that I like to do to represent light, shadows, ripples in the water, and all that goodies. There are a couple options that you can go. It also depends on where your light source is. Let's just say that it's high noon. Okay, just for a little bit of suspense. So the shadows are going to be pretty much straight down. We'll paint that in. But let's also show light reflection in the water. And there are a couple ways to go about it. Personally, my favorite is to use a Feywild texture. There is this kind of wave thing, but a mangrove doesn't have a lot of waves. It's kind of placid. So let's go over to our Feywild options. I think you can just type in Fey. Okay, and you're going to see these white Fey lights, okay? We're also going to want to change the size. Now, what I've noticed that the white Fey lights work as is if anyone's been to the ocean or been to a lake, you notice that the reflection on the water kind of looks like a string or a bead of pearls or diamonds. It's kind of white and sparkly. That's pretty much what we're going to be aiming for, and you're going to see a lot of that. So I'm just going to drop the opacity just a bit. Doesn't have to be too much. And I'm just going to put in these spots right here. And this white right here is basically the reflection of the sun on the water. Okay? And you want to put it away from the trees, okay? Because that's just going to be shadow there. So don't do that. Okay? So these open spaces like this, you're going to be putting these sparkles to kind of give it this sense of some reflection of the sun. Okay? Once you've added in those sparkles, we're going to add in the next part, which is our shadowing, okay? And you're going to want to drop the opacity significantly down. Let's probably stick with 40 for now, or 36 is fine. And we're going to create the shadows for these groups. Now, normally, if you wanted to use the object shadows within each one, you could do that. Let's just go ahead and verify and see how that looks, okay? Let's open this up. It should be a group. Let's make sure it's only group, so we'll select that. Swamp tree, and click this to open it up. Click object. Now, just a pro tip, when you open up a group for the first time and you open it up, every single stamp in that group is going to be selected. So kind of keep that in mind, okay? I know you don't see anything in the thing. Let's just go all, okay? And you can select all, all right? We're going to go over to object. Now you're going to see there's a group of shadows. And we're putting the shadow straight down because we're not going to worry about, oh, let's go ahead and change that up. Okay, here we go. Let's go to blur. There we go, a little bit better. Let's get full black, there we go, include that, there we go, okay. And we're going to have this same setting to basically all of this. So if I open up this group like this, and you go to either click this to go open, or you can just double click it. Let's make sure, let's just go back to groups. For some reason, yeah, it's not working. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna select this. Everything's been selected. We're gonna go to object. Okay, and we're just gonna go back to the original settings, add that blur. And I probably could have done this from the beginning, so I could have avoided doing it. But hey, mistakes happen, right? Okay. And you're going to notice that by adding that shadow, we're just going to say a little bit of ambient inclusion in there. It does make it look like these are popping out a bit more, okay? So we're going to do, again, do the same thing, object shadows to all of these. Unfortunately, I just have to do the settings all over again. That's kind of my mistake. Okay. Same thing, every single one of them. Next time, just do it in the beginning. Okay. Slowly getting there. Okay, shoot. Better get on to the next biome here. I can just do that off screen. Let's just finish it up. Okay, all the way up. We're getting close. Just a couple more. And you know, you can also experiment things with things too. You can change your object shadow to something different. I've done this once in a while where you change the shadow to an entirely different color. Like you can change it to this dark green. All right, bring up the blur, and it's closer to this very, very dark green, but you'll see a difference. You see it's a bit different from with this. I'm gonna go ahead and just off screen change everything to that green later. For now, I'll just go ahead and add all the shadows in. Choose that dark green. I think that works kind of nice. Okay. All right. All right. So you have your kind of your swamp here. All right. And if you should want to add waves, you absolutely can. That's okay. Let's go ahead and just pick wave. Let's just add this last little texture just to kind of show you. We're going to go to size. It's going about that angle. That's fine. And the opacity is good. Let's go ahead and just quickly do a couple swipes here. I'm going to put them just in the corner here. I'm not going to put them everywhere. Let's actually increase the opacity. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put them all over here. Just say that this is where the ocean is. It's kind of coming in right here. All right, there we go. All right, 106 changes. Good time to save. There's kind of your mangrove. And if you're not satisfied with that, with the stamp that you used for foliage, there's so many different options, so just kind of keep that in mind. I actually don't like the one that I used. I actually would prefer different ones, but I think that this does work. Let's go ahead and make our save. Hey, White. All right, sweet. We're getting there. All right, let's go move on to the next biome. Let's go to desert. Sweet. All right, so we got to switch. We're gonna have to go ahead and switch over to a different layer. This should be negative. This should be the BG. I'm gonna go ahead and just verify that by putting one swipe, just to make sure. Oh, works just fine. Great. Okay. So as always with your biome, pick your base texture. So you just open up press your B key, then press your F key to open the catalog. And we can click in sand if we want. There should be a whole different options of sand here. Let's go ahead and kind of pick this one for now. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and use that nice rectangle shape because it's much easier than having to just paint everything in by hand. So you just press enter and boom, there it is. And actually, I want to change it up. Let's think about where my light source is and where the shadows are of the sand. You'll notice that the sand and the snow texture are pretty much the same thing, just different texture, different colors. I can kind of see that a bit. So the sun would be coming directly down like this. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. And let's go ahead and check out our stamp options. Do we have any dunes? We do. Perfect. So let's go ahead and pick our dunes. And remember, when placing your dune, think carefully about what layer it's on and where your shadows are. So if the sun is up here, you can tell because of the dark side of the sand ripples here. You'll see there's some dark on that side. So clearly that's where the sun is at. So let's go ahead and add a couple big dunes. Okay. Go ahead and maneuver it. And what I like to do when doing my dunes is to connect what's called this line right here we're going to connect the dunes line work, that center line, together to kind of create a bead or a string. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have the shadow at the right angle, so it's going like that. Let's do that. Okay, go back to stamps, and you're going to cycle through. Okay, and we're going to look and kind of just put these together like this, and there's your first ridge of dunes. Okay, make sure I got to select everything. Let's make it just a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is your first ridge, and you can create another ridge and another ridge if you wish. Let's go through our stamp options here. So here's this one. We'll create another ridge over here. Let's go ahead and pick our options here for our stamps. All right. Okay, and let's put one. Let's move this over real quick. Pick this one, put it over here, and pick this one, and then put it over here. And we're going to rotate it. I do want the ridges to line up. That one doesn't work out very well, so we'll pick a different one. Okay, this one will work just fine. So the shadow was right, the shadow was right. Okay, doing good. Let's go ahead and add one more. We'll go a little off screen. Okay, there you go. So don't forget your shadows. So you have the dark side of the dune here, so the sun is up here somewhere. It's kind of nice. Okay, and I did this with my last terrain. I added a little oasis, and I'll just quickly add a real quick oasis. All right, because deserts are really plain, very sandy. At least the one we're working on here is going to be very kind of plain and sandy. Sorry for that noise. And so what we're going to do is just add in some kind of natural location, and I always like to add oases. So we're going to add a really, really small oasis. It's not going to be very big. I'm probably going to huddle it up against this sand dune right here. It's kind of a nice place to put it. So we're going to go our B key, F key to go to the catalog. We're going to type in water, okay? And we're going to pick a water that's kind of bright, very see-through, because it is in the desert. So let's click this one right here. We're going to want to check our size. Let's drop it down, and again, rotate so you can kind of remove some of that tiling. Okay, and I am going to paint this in instead of using the add mode or the subtract mode of the mask tool. So let's go ahead and pick our brush, and you're going to put it at 100%. That's okay. And we're going to make it somewhat small, and we're going to think about our shape. I'm going to go with something kind of like a kidney bean. I did not mean to brush right there. Let me make sure that my touch screen is off. There we go. Okay, so this is where our oasis is going to be, right here, huddled up against here. In fact, I want it to be just a little bit farther away from the dune. There we go, like this. There you go. And if you're going to have an oasis, you're going to need a little bit of grass as well. So let's go ahead and pick a grass texture, because there's going to be a little bit of grass. A little bit of grass. So let's put that, and we're going to again change the size so it's a little bit smaller. And let's rotate it just to avoid that tiling. Okay, and I am going to actually drop the opacity just a bit. Let's go with 50%, and you're going to make it small. And what we're doing is just going to go around the shore and put just a little bit of green around like this. Okay, and you can even go out a little bit. Maybe follow the contours of the sand dunes just a little bit, like this, just a bit. Some there, some right there. Follow those contours. So now you have a little bit of grass. We're going to drop it down another size, even smaller, and we're going to make it even greener along this edge here. There we go. Nice. Okay. And you're going to want to also make it to where the water is a bit darker in the center. So all you got to do is just select that same texture in your recently used right there. Go over to advanced settings, filters, brightness, drop it down. Okay, and then we'll go in the center here and just make it a bit darker. Just a little bit, okay? There we go. So this kind of represents some depth. So this oasis is somewhat deep in the center, not a whole lot. Okay, so there's your depth. And then we're going to go ahead and add some palm trees. So O key for object, tool, F key to open up the catalog. And I believe there are palm trees, so let's go ahead and pick those up. The catalog load up. And let's go ahead and click in palm. Oh, never mind, they're right there. Perfect. Now there's a couple of different kinds of palm trees. You've got one that shows the trunk, so obviously it's kind of leaning and bending. I actually really like that. That's really nice. So let's put one right there. Okay, and let's go ahead and turn off our object shadows, because I got an idea for these shadows. We're going to use this exact same stamp right here to make the object shadows. Let's go ahead and first just add more palm trees. I also wanted to have another one that's kind of overlapping the here to create this sense of depth. Okay, so you place that, it's overlapping the oasis, and because it is top down, we definitely want to make sure that we add in some top down, no trunks whatsoever. Let's go ahead and drop the size down, add a couple there, like this. They're usually in little clusters, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so now you've added some palm trees. This could even be just a bit smaller. It's a bit huge. Okay, drop that size down just a bit more as well. Okay, so you've added a little bit of some trees there, and the last bit is we're going to use this same stamp right here, and we're going to go ahead and what we did before right here. We used these tree stamps to represent these trees, and we're going to do the same thing right here. Okay, so you just drop that brightness all the way down. You also want to make sure it's a layer below the stamp you're trying to portray, and we also want to drop the opacity, and if I remember correctly, it was pretty low. There we go, about there. And all you got to do is just place this stamp down like this, and our shadows are right here. So let's rotate it just a little bit more, and let's also make sure that we have all these randomized rotation options off, because I don't want that. Okay, and I'm going to place it right like that. So there's your first one. And you're going to do it again with this other one right here like that. Okay, and you can do that to all of them. Put one there. You can even rotate, pick the next one, go there, add that one there, and let's go ahead and bring that size down a bit. Let's go with the other one. Where is it? There it is. So you got that small one right there, one there, and one right there. Okay, so now you have your nice shadows going on there. Gives it some nice depth. Sweet, looks pretty good. And if you feel like there's just too much monotony going on with this texture, then you can break that up. Let's go back into the menu here, go to sand, and let's take a look at some of these textures that might work. This one's kind of nice. There's some nice artifacts in here. Let's just go ahead and pick this one for now. And we're going to go ahead and adjust the size, make it small. We're going to rotate it again to break the tiling. And again, make sure the opacity is low. Softness all the way up. Increase your brush size. And with again, with these negative spaces, just kind of apply that texture. And what we're going to try to do is just kind of break up these little dunes and just kind of add in some other color, because it's just very monotonous. There we go. Kind of breaking it up. There's some nice crack kind of texturing going on that looks kind of nice, so we'll add that in here as well. Okay, there and some right there. All right, sweet. Let's take a zoom out, take a look. Right, all right. I think that looks pretty good so far. Yeah, that'll do just fine. All right, shadows look good. You got a nice little thing here. We can even add in our fade lights. Those fade lights work great. Let's see if I can find out where they are. Oh yeah, if you are, I forgot to mention this, a pro tip, if you are planning on using the same texture over and over again, I totally recommend that you favorite it. So let's do that right now. I'm going to click in Fade White Lights, okay? And I'm also going to size it down. You can see a lot of those sparkles in there. Perfect. I'm going to bring the opacity up. And then once you have the settings where you want, now I definitely recommend that you favorite a texture that you're going to be editing a lot, because favoriting will save those settings, because the recently used unfortunately has a limit to how many can be in that little gallery there, okay? But if you go into favorites, you can put, I think, as many as you want. Let's just go ahead and save this to favorites, and you'll see right here, favorites. So there's that list. There's one right there. Perfect. Okay. And we're also going to just right away apply those sparkles just to give it like some sunlight. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. Ooh, and I got to make sure not to put it over in the future. Don't put it on the shadows. Try to avoid the shadow, because technically there wouldn't be any reflection from the sun there. Okay. Just kind of keep that in mind. Let's fit to screen. Let's take an overall look and save. Thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate it. If none of you have yet, go check out in the description below, or actually, I'm sorry, in the comments, you'll find the link to my profile as well. Philip, if you haven't already, go ahead and plug in the link to your profile. Incredible cartographer. I absolutely recommend you check him out. Thank you for all your help. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is going to be jungle. We've only got about 35 minutes to finish these, so it might go over just a hair. So if I remember correctly, this should be the FG. Let's go ahead over to the brush, click G, and I'm just going to verify, just add a texture on there, just to make sure that it is the right one. Perfect. It is. Great. Let's go ahead and pick a texture that we want the jungle floor to be. So we're going to go in, take a look, and I don't think we have jungle specific textures, so you'll have to be a little creative and kind of just take a look at what the options are. Now, a jungle is generally extremely dense forest, especially tropical rainforest, extremely dense, bustling with life, and there's not much. You can't really see the canopy or through the canopy of the forest. So there, when you're doing a map and you're doing a jungle, you're going to have to keep in mind, depending on what you're making, if it's a battle map, you clearly don't want every single tree to show up. So I'm going to show you a really cool trick with shadows and trees, so that when you're making a battle map, you can avoid the canopy and still see the stumps and be able to see the ground, because a battle map is only so good as what you can see in the open space that your players can run around. So let's go ahead and first just apply a texture that we want to this jungle one. We're going to change the size again, and you'll see there is some tiling. So we stick to that nice little trick of rotating, and we're going to make sure that the right layer is selected, got that nice rectangle shape, and we're just going to, bingo, just apply it right away. Press enter, boom, there you go. Okay, a little dark, but I think it'll do for right now. Okay, we can make it a little bit lighter if you want. Technically, your jungle floor is going to be very dark, because there's so much foliage that not a lot of light can penetrate through. So let's just do a bunch of things here. So first things first, I want to show you this nice little trick. This works absolute wonders. First, you're going to grab your stumps, okay? We're going to make sure we're at the right opacity and know what layer we're on. Let's go with default. Okay, so just place down one stump of your choice, okay? And then the next step is to kind of pick the tree that you want. And I'm going to pick a bunch of trees. So let's go with these kind of dead trees that we picked last time, only they have a little bit of foliage right here. So let's pick that, okay? Let's make it nice and big so I can kind of see it. Click it, place it down. And what we're going to do is make sure the blend mode's at normal. And we're going to do that same trick. We're going to go with our brightness going all the way down, all the way black, and then we're going to drop the opacity. Let's make sure so we can see it. There we go, that's good. And then you're going to go ahead and place it over your stump, okay? And now what you've got here now is that even though there's no actual foliage, there's just the shadow of the foliage, okay? So this way your characters can run around and not and you can kind of see the battle map that you're creating. Again, maybe in a world map, you don't need to do this, obviously, because it's just going to be the straight up forest, this giant jungle. But with battle maps, you're going to want to be able to make sure that your characters or your players can see. So we're just going to stick with one for right now. So you have the stump there. And what you're going to do is just take a bunch of those stumps and just place them everywhere. Okay? I want to make sure we're going to be at the right opacity because it is going to remember that. So let's just go back down. Let's go ahead and place one there. Let's place another one over here. And I'm going to change the size as well. So you can put one right there. Over here. We're going to put one over here. And this corner. And another one over here. Okay? So there's all our trees for now. Okay? And we are going to go back into here. And you also can use your other trees as well. Let's go back to summer trees. So you can use whatever tree you want because none of the color is going to show up when you do this. What you're looking for is just the shadow shape that you want, right? Okay? Oopsie. I actually want to have it to where I can see it. So I have the stamp selected. I go to turn off my shadow. I change my brightness and I drop the opacity. And make sure that it's at the right opacity. You want it just dark enough. There we go. And just go ahead and place that on top. And I'm going to do it to all the stumps. So there's one there. There's a large one right here. Yes, it's overlapping into the desert. I understand. One there. And let's put a smaller state right there. There you go. Okay. And if you want, you can add in a bunch of other shadows too. If you want, let's just drop the opacity just a hair. Okay. And just put one there, put one there, put one there, one there, one there, okay? And if it's too dark, you can always change your base texture, so that's super nice. We can take this texture right here and just make it just a little bit brighter if we wanted to, okay? And we'll go ahead and apply it again. So it's a little bit brighter, so you can kind of see your forest floor a little bit better, okay? And you can come up with whatever variations that you want. I'm just going to just show you what you do. You put down your stump first, right? And then you make sure that you grab whatever tree stamp that you want, okay? You drop the brightness down to 0, okay? And then you drop the opacity to whatever opacity you want it to be, okay? And that represents the shadow of the foliage, but not the foliage itself, so you can kind of see this floor. Now the texture is all rather plain, so we're going to add a bunch of stuff in here to kind of fix that up. We're going to use what I normally do, which is a brown texture, and I'm just going to do it, drop the size, rotate it, and just kind of do it underneath the trees, okay? Make sure that I use the right brush. Let's go with edgy, because that's kind of fun. Okay, and let's go ahead and just apply like this. A little bit of brown, okay? And I'm actually going to make a path with it pretty much, so where your players can kind of go through. So there's a nice little path right here going through like that. Okay. And we'll put some underneath some of these trees as well, just a little bit. Some there. Okay. And some there. Some here. Okay. And there is that favorite texture of mine that I love so much, that alpha texture. And since I'm using it more than once, I'll be sure to fix it. I think it's called dry grass, which it is perfect, and I'm going to favorite that because I might use it again. And I think I will actually do the changing of the size so that I can fit as much, because I'm using the previewer, I'm looking at it and lining it up with the tile that I'm on, right? And I'm going to rotate it just a hair, and I'm going to have it at 100%, okay, which is fine. It's an alpha, and I'm going to go ahead and just start painting in where my road is, or the path, okay? There we go, nice, we're coming together. All right, so you kind of have this little path right here, you have some trees, okay? And if you feel the stumps are too dark and you can't see them, you can increase the brightness of that, so just keep that in mind. Let's just go with selecting that stump, this one. Actually, and I would select other ones, but there's other stumps floating around, so I will show you a quick trick. You can go ahead and select all, Okay, or you can select one tree like this, select all stamps like this, select all stamps from this set. As you can see, it's going to select all of it, so that's kind of a problem. Looks like that one's selected, and this tree, let's see, where is it? Not sure why that's selected. Let me check. Oh, yeah, that one right there. Got it. Okay. Should be all those stumps. Okay. And you can go ahead and increase the brightness so you can kind of see the stump a little better. There you go. If it makes it a little bit better. Okay. Looks good so far. Interesting stuff I saw in the chat there. Okay, we'll address that in the future. Let's go ahead and save, and I'm going to actually refresh the page now before things get out of hand. So I've been doing this for an hour and a half. Definitely going to save, definitely going to refresh as well. So we'll do that real quick. I noticed someone sent something in the comments that I really liked. Really interesting. Cool. All right. Nice tip, Philip. Okay. So let's go ahead and refresh the page. Okay. We're going to clear up all that data, that map history, the map log or the change log. It's going to be quite full. So by refreshing the page, the change log has now been wiped, and it will not be quite as laggy, and you won't encounter quite as many bugs. I just want to quickly remind anybody that if you bump into any save issues, I immediately recommend that you go up into your hamburger menu and go to save offline backup. Super important. While we're in here, I'm going to just mention one more thing. If your screen goes black, you're missing some stamps, or you're missing an FG or your BG, you're going to click this recovery tool right here. And I highly recommend that when you run the recovery tool, you first take the problematic map, make a clone of it, and then run the recovery on the clone, okay? Just in case the recovery does something a little unexpected, your original map will be safe from whatever changes that you did with the recovery feature, okay? So just kind of keep in mind these two important things. Save your offline backup, just in case your save fails, and recovery if any of your layers go missing, okay? Great. Let's go ahead and move along. We're going to go straight to Grassland. And again, I have to go to each catalog and change it over to Fantasy Battlemap. So we're going to quickly do that. Also, same thing with stamps. Open it right up. And we're going to switch over to Battlemap 2.0. We'll try to do this quickly. Okay, let's switch out. Okay, Grassland, super easy. It's mostly just, you guessed it, grass. Okay? So I'm not going to do a whole lot. Thankfully, this one's going to go a lot quicker, and then the rest of the stream I can finish up rivers, because rivers are much more time consuming. So let's just go straight to Grassland. All right? We're going to pick the grass texture we want. I want it to be the right size. Okay? Let's go and pick this one. I think it's been sized right, just to verify. Perfect. Let's do that. And I should rotate it. There we go. I think this is going to be the FG. Let me just verify that. Nope, I think it's the BG. Let me just double check. Yep, it is the BG. Okay. So this layer is the BG. So there's your grass for your grassland. It's a little bit more complex than just grass. There's some trees, there's some tufts. You might find some slight elevation changes. Not very much though, okay? So let's just go ahead and first just add some very slight elevation changes with cliffs just to break up. So there should be a cliff in the catalog or available right here. And for those of you who didn't make it to the beginning of the stream, I just want to let you know that the cliffs in the BM, the battle maps, the fantasy battle maps, have what's called a clipping mask. Okay, so let me first explain what a clipping mask is. The clipping mask is going to be a little mask that's on here that picks up whatever is on the FG. You'll notice that it turns brown over here. That's because the FG layer is being picked up. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. If you don't like that clipping mask being on, you just have to go and select it and you'll notice right here there's a toggle that says clipping mask, and you click that and you'll notice right here that the clipping mask is being turned off. Okay, we're going to turn it off because we really don't need it. Okay, and we're probably also going to change it to luminosity because we kind of want it to match in, and I'm going to also just drop the contrast a bit, just a hair. I kind of want it to be a little bit softer. I don't want it to be too dark, okay? Because most of the grassland is fairly flat. I'm not going to say entirely flat. There is some minor elevation changes, but it's very minor, okay? Let's go back to objects, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to the luminosity blend mode. It should have kept the contrast and everything else. Just verify that it did. It did indeed. Okay, so I'm just going to make some very minor elevation changes, nothing serious. We'll put one there, and then we'll put, oopsie, and you can see there's that clipping mask is turned on. Okay, don't forget to turn that off. See, clipping mask off. So now you don't have that problem anymore. For right now, for the time being, you cannot turn the clipping mask off while it's in the object mode or object tool. You'll have to select it with the selection tool, and that's something that we will look into and fix, just so you know. Okay, let's go ahead and add in just a couple more elevation changes. And again, like I said, you'll have to turn off the clipping mask. Let's put one there, and let's go ahead and put a couple together to make kind of a, no, I think that should be okay. This should be all right. Okay, select these two, go in, click the clipping mask, turn those clipping masks off. Naughty clipping masks. Okay. They do work really well, actually, for a lot of things, but sometimes you don't want them on. So just know that you have the option to turn them off. Okay. All right. So we've got some minor elevation stuff going on here. Okay. And we're just going to add some trees in here. I'm going to go into the catalog and just try to do something slightly different than what we have been doing. We can kind of look for different plants. So let's just put in just a couple trees, just one or two. Okay. Not a whole lot. We're just going to click one there, and we'll pick a small one right here, because we're going to do with that whole monotony of size thing. Just put them in a cluster, put one over here, and just put one more over here. Right, so this is all the trees that we got, okay? And we're going to turn all those trees shadows off. We don't need them. We'll go ahead and do something different. So let's go none for now. Okay, sweet. Now you have your basic setup here. Next, we're going to put grass tufts everywhere, okay? So the next step then is to go ahead and select grass. So we're going to take a look at some various options. I know that these are technically lake fronds, but these look really nice to me as grass. So I'm going to zoom in real quick, take a look, just see how it looks on there. Okay. Let's go ahead. These look like cattails to me right here. This brown part right here, this looks like the head of a cattail. So let's go ahead and turn the shadow off, none for now, and I am going to go ahead and switch over to luminosity blend mode. I kind of want it to match in just a little bit more, and I do want to drop the contrast. I don't want too much of those hard lights, those hard lines. Okay, and I'm just going to place them. This is pretty tall grass. Pretty big grass. In fact, actually at that size, it's super hard to see them. So let's add just a little bit of contrast in. Okay, that should be right. All right, turn off our blend mode, object. Okay, and let's go ahead and place them down. And you're going to place all from one size. I do this for every single map. You start with one size that's fairly large. We've been doing this the whole time. Fairly large like this, right? Okay, oopsie, and also let's go ahead and pick random, so they'll randomize and random rotation as well, okay? We're going to drop the size down then, add a couple more. You'll notice that it kind of breaks up that weird kind of single monotonous size issue. Okay, and we're going to go down even smaller size. So we'll add a couple really, really small ones in there. There. Okay. And break from. So let's go ahead and select them all and then go through a series of options. They are so much darker. So we might want to consider changing some things, either making them brighter or just so they're not sticking out so much, okay? And you obviously don't want to stick with just the base texture alone. You're going to want to go ahead and choose another texture to break up that monotony of that texture. This grass one with the brown bits in it is quite nice. We're also going to want to size it down. Let's make sure that we do that. We're going to do that rotation. There we go. Okay, let's go with our brush. I'm going to go with softness. I'm not going to use an edgy brush on this one. I am going to drop the opacity down, and we're going to go ahead and just add it like this. Give him some nice, there we go, I like that, looks good. Put one right here, and right here. Nice, so much better. Break too much green. That nice yellow or brown right there kind of helps to break a little bit of that green. Okay, and the last step is to go ahead and add our shadows and maybe a little bit of texture, more texturing. Let's go ahead and copy and paste these shadows. And let's go ahead and go with an entirely different direction that we've been going. So let's go ahead and bring it up to the proper layer. Okay, perfect. Now we'll go ahead and do it to all these trees. So we'll put one there. It might be just a teeny bit smaller. There we go, one there. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay, one there. Much smaller. Okay, and one right there. So now you have, again, these elongated shadows. That is, again, because it is going to be, going to be either closer to sunset or sunrise with these elongated shadows. Okay, just keep that in mind. Okay, let's go ahead and add in the last bit of shadows. These pieces right here should have shadows, and we can just go ahead and use object shadows for that. That's perfect. So let's go ahead and select all our cliffs that are right here. And we're going to go ahead and go to Object. So they're going to have a shadow. We're going to drop the blur down quite a bit. And we're going to change the offsets. Bring it down right about there is fine. And we're definitely going to want to change the opacity of that shadow. Don't want it to be too dark, just dark enough. Because we are wanting to make it around the same opacity as these shadows. Obviously, if you were to make it this dark, it looks way out. Just doesn't look right? Doesn't match with those shadows. So you have to drop the opacity to the point where the shadows are a little bit more with some continuity with each other. So you drop it down. That is about right. It's not blending too much along that edge. So that's about right. There we go. Looks nice. And there's one more thing that we can add in. We're going to add in a forest texture with maybe just a little bit of fallen stuff, not too much. Let's go ahead and use this one, or we can go over to, let's go with leaves and flower textures. Actually, this one works a lot nicer. I like this one. Let's go ahead and look at it. Those about the leaves. These look like deciduous leaves and not conifers, so that might not work. Okay? Conifers leave different types of things. This is twigs and stones, and this one might work a little bit better. So let's go ahead and drop it down, the size, rotate, okay? Then we'll go with full opacity, and we're gonna go ahead and just apply it where the base of the trees are, okay? You don't have to put it too much. This is just gonna add a little bit of brown and add in some twig and stones. It's gonna give it just a little bit more oomph, a little bit more character. Let's go take a look. Yes, much better. Okay. Let's go ahead and save and do the last one, and it's going to be rivers. This might take just a little bit longer than just 15 minutes, so bear with me here. Rivers are a little bit more complex. There is someone on our Discord server named Jeremy Forever Mimics Maps, and they have an excellent river tutorial. I absolutely recommend that you go ahead and check it out. I also have several tutorials on rivers as well, and I think several other of our users have them. There's someone in our EA named Hustle. I also recommend that you check out their tutorials. They have some great ones, so go check those out, okay? All right, let's go ahead and do the last thing. So the last one we're going to do is we're going to do a river, okay? And we're going to go ahead and use our cliffs to make basically the shore or the ledge of where the river is going to be. Okay. So first we're going to piece these stamps together to make where our river is. Okay. So we're going to go like this, and I recommend that you put down the stamps first before you place the river water, okay? Because if you do the opposite, if you start with making the water of the river first, then you're going to have to make the stamps conform to the shape of the river, okay? It's actually easier to place your stamps and then put down your texture or the mask tool, okay? So just keep that in mind. I do not recommend that you make the water first when it comes to a river with battle maps. Instead, start with your stamps, okay? Absolutely recommend it. So let's go ahead and get started with making our river. So we've created one edge of the shore. We can make another one too. You can do things quickly by just copying and pasting. So I went ahead and just copied that whole little ledge there, and I'm just going to put it right along like this, okay? So there's basically your river, okay? And we're going to add more stamps too. Let's go ahead and add one more, put it over here. It's kind of small, I do apologize. Okay, we can zoom out a little bit, make this a bit smaller as well. So that way they show more. I want to not make it too small. Like, I want to make it big enough to where people can see some of the things that I'm going to be doing. So we want to make it zoomed in just a little bit. So let's move this out. Okay, so there's a little bit more shore, or the river's a little bit wider. We can do a lot with that. So that first step is done. Okay, you've added all this stuff. All that's there. There's no shadows. Let's go ahead and group this, and then we're going to rename it cliffs. Okay, let's go ahead and select it, group, rename, call it river cliffs. Okay, now immediately, well, actually, let's go ahead and fill it in first with water so that way you can see the effect. So let's add some water in, and we're going to go ahead and select water again. Boom, here's all our water options, and you're going to want to figure out kind of what texture that you want to use. I kind of like this one. It's got some stuff at the bottom, so that's less work for you. You don't have to create, some texturing at the bottom of the river or add extra items. It's because this texture already has a bunch of artifacts in it. So save yourself some time, okay, by picking textures that have enough artifacts in it to where you have less work to do. Because the objective really is not to make a map in a ridiculously short amount of time, but to speed up your map making process so that it doesn't take quite as long. It just takes a shorter amount of time for you to make the map. That's just a rule of thumb. I just want you to know that it's pretty much impossible to make an incredible map in a short period of time. If you want a good map, you're going to have to dedicate time. One thing you can do though is just make it to where it's shorter and not longer, okay? So if you follow a certain order of operation or certain steps like I'm doing here, it really, really speeds up the process, okay? So let's go ahead and apply our texture. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right layer. It's not, it's on the FG. And because we are filling in like inside of these lines, we're not going to use a soft brush, because what happens if I go off the edge a little bit there, right? So the turning off the softness will help to make it to where I don't bleed off the edges there. So turn the softness off, drop the size down. And a good thing to do first is just to do the edges like this with a small brush, okay? If you were to fill in this entire space with that small brush, it's going to take a little while. See, it's going to take a few minutes. So there's a technique that I use. You start with the edges first, and the reason why you're doing this is you're creating a kind of layer right here of texture, so that when you go with a larger brush, you would go over, but the larger brush lets you fill in that space. You've created a protective little barrier of texture so you don't accidentally go over. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind as a little pro tip there. So there's your water. Now know that these are on the same layer. Normally I would have this be a different layer. And in fact, we can kind of do that. This is set to FG. If we were to go BG, here, go to subtract, like this. I'm going to go ahead and just do this real quick. This is what I would normally recommend that you do, is that you actually make your water and your land different layers. Normally your land would be FG and your water would be the BG. It just depends. So let's go ahead and fill this, and just know that this section right here is now in the same layer as this one. So kind of keep that in mind. But I'll show you anyway. We go with a bigger brush, just the same trick like this. That way you don't go over the edges. Okay, so it's an entirely different color now. We switch to BG. So this is BG now, and you'll notice that it goes off to here too, see? So just kind of keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're making it your own, if you're doing it in your own thing, and you're not using these little squares like I am, it's not really a problem. But just for going along, just to kind of show you, again, do these little edges right here, and you'll notice that it doesn't go over to the other layer. That's super nice. So actually, we don't even have to worry about that. So I'll just go back to my size like this. And as you can see, it doesn't go over. Not sure why I was doing that technique. Not the smartest. There we go. Okay. So at least your water is now on a separate layer. BG, or well, in the video, this is FG, this is BG, or this is FG, this is BG. So keep that in mind. BG, FG. Okay. So immediately, I'm going to do some fun stuff. I'm going to take my cliffs. Okay. I'm going to copy and paste them. So I have this whole set of cliffs right here. And we're going to open up the group, edit group, and we're going to change the blend mode to opacity, okay? So what we're trying to do is create a bank that's going to be underneath, okay? So we're going to want to make sure it's a layer below. So, okay, that looks like the wrong one. Alt-Z. I think this is the proper one. Let me double check. It is. Okay, let's go down one layer, okay? And what you're going to do is line up your cliffs along this edge like this. I'm going to ungroup as well. Okay. And pull these stamps out. Need to be a layer below, by the way. There we go, like this. All these need to be a layer below. Okay. And what I'm doing is just making it look like the cliff extends underwater, okay? That's really all that's going on here. Just make sure it's at the right layer. I just ungrouped it so I can select them more easily. That's it. Okay. We're going to drop that down. There we go. And of course, if you're going to do that, I totally recommend that you drop the opacity as well. Oops, don't want to grab the group. Okay. And we're going to drop the opacity. There we go. Nice. I think this one got missed. There we go. Okay. So now you have some depth there. Okay, that's nice. And as always, we're going to do water depth. So we're going to pick that same water texture, go to filters under advanced settings, drop the brightness because it's going to be darker in the center here. We're going to make sure we're set to the right layer and your brightness is up, okay? So in the center, oopsie, that is way too dark. I think I might have not done the opacity right. There we go. Okay. So in the center, you're going to see it's going to be just a bit darker. So just kind of keep that in mind. This is where it's a little bit darker like this. There we go. Nice. Okay. And if you don't like that, you can change it up. It's a bit dark for my taste. So what we'll do is pick some spots to kind of break it up a bit more. It's okay to make mistakes. Just go back over it. And thankfully, it's on a different layer. There we go. That looks nice. It's kind of just breaking up, creating little clusters like this, so it's not just a continuity, this continuous line of darker color. That looks super weird and unnatural, so let's not do that. And I'll put just a little bit over here with the darker texture. There we go. Okay, so step one. Okay, so you've kind of done that, okay? Now we're going to want to move on and kind of change up our river. We're going to add some forest floor to it, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it on the FG. I'm going to bring this all the way up. Let's go ahead and just press this. Just kind of see how it looks. Oopsie. Oh, I see. Okay. So you are going to have to watch out. It looks like some of these stamps overlapped just a hair. So you're going to want to just go like this up against this ledge right here so you don't accidentally hit it. Okay, like this. There we go. Sweet. kind of a nice little technique you can use to kind of avoid accidentally going over something, overlapping. A little dark for my taste, so let's go ahead and rechange it to change the brightness. A bit brighter, I'd say. Maybe even change the size. Let's do that. I'm going to bring the softness up and worry about just doing the center of it. Well, it can be a little darker along those edges. I don't mind. That's okay. Okay, let's go ahead and add this here. There we go. Nice. I actually like that brown there quite a bit. Looks kind of nice. Just put it along that ledge there. Kind of nice. Just gonna little taps here and there to give it some dirt. There you go. Okay. All right. Technically, it is after 12 or closing upon 12. So let's go ahead and wrap this stuff up. Okay. So first, let's go ahead and add just some stuff along the river here. I'll show some cool techniques too in just a little bit with river water, with flow. Let's just quickly populate the land section with some trees and some grass and stuff, and then we'll move on to how to do your rivers. Again, I recommend, if you haven't, check out Jeremy Forever's river tutorial video. It is fantastic. Go to Reddit, you can find it there. Look them up, great stuff. Let's go ahead and quickly add some stuff in. I'm not going to worry about too much. The focus is on the river specifically and not the grass part, though we can do that. So let's just do this, and I'll show you some really, really cool techniques. I'm going to show you, okay? Make sure that those trees are on that right layer because it looks like it's below. There we go. This one looks good. This one looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and select all these trees. Let's take this one right here. We're going to copy, paste it. Really cool technique. Drop the shadow, turn that off, and drop the opacity. And what you got right here is a reflection in the water. But make sure it's in the right layer, okay? So if I put it below like this, there it is. You've got this nice reflection in the water from this tree overhanging, okay? So super nice technique. Totally recommend using it. Let's do it again. Let's copy and paste this tree. Get rid of that, drop the opacity down, and let's take it down a layer or two. And we're going to put it right there over that ledge so you can see some reflection. And it's okay if it shows up on the land too. It's not a big deal because it's going to be hidden by the texture, but for sure you want to be able to see it in the water. Okay, so that's important. Let's go ahead and bring it up. There we go. I can see it right there in the water. So that's super nice for reflections, just to give you a heads up there. And one thing we're also going to want to do is maybe add just a couple rocks along the base of this, because some of this, what rivers do is there's something called meandering, and meandering is these S-shaped curves. And what these S-shaped curves are is they're shaped by sediment, rock, that gets carried in the flow of the river, and when it meanders, it goes up against the bank and it erodes the bank. Okay, so when you're doing a meandering and it's curving, all that sediment is carving away, and it's going to leave some rock and debris along those edges. So what I definitely recommend you do is using a rock stamp. I'm not going to use a texture, though we can later. Let's just go and look for it as a stamp. Oopsie, I went out of the catalog. Go ahead and click rock in the catalog. There should be a couple. These small ones are going to work just fine. And because they're in the water, you're going to want to go ahead and do that luminosity blend mode trick. Okay? We want to pick up that texture. And you're going to place one down just for right now, just to see how it looks. And I think that looks pretty good. And we're going to put just a bunch along that ledge, okay? Or along the base of the cliff. Like that. So you have a couple rocks floating around. Super, super nice. So now we've added a little bit more natural feel to it with these rocks in the ground. Put one there, put some there. All along, anywhere where that blue part of the cliff is, where it's underwater, will work just fine. Okay, and we can also add a texture as well. Press that B key to go to brush, F key to go to the catalog, and we're gonna go ahead and look up rock. There should be some, maybe stone, I'm not sure. They're right there. These These rocks right here should work just fine. Okay, let's go ahead and make sure the size is right. These are huge. Let's make them smaller. That looks nice. And we're also going to drop the opacity. And the reason why we're dropping the opacity is because we want this blue texture to be picked up below. Okay, so keep that, wants to pick up that texture. So if I apply some stones like this, you'll kind of see that they're going to be blue. It's a lower opacity right now, so you might not see them yet, but as I continue to add more, oopsie, FG, my bad. This is why you're not seeing them. There we go. Okay. So we're on the right layer. And we're going to keep adding like this. And you're going to see some of those stones popping up. You see some stones right there, some stones right there. There we go. Nice, 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 nice. Okay. Looking good, looking good. Okay. I'm going to show a couple more tricks and then we're going to call it good. One of the first tricks that I really, really like to do is to show the flow of the river. Okay, now how do you show which direction the river is flowing? Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. Let's go ahead and take that rock that we had before, like this one. Let's go ahead and bring it at full opacity. Okay, and we're going to also get rid of the luminosity. What a normal, actually, I think there are some waterfall rocks. Let's see if I can find those. There we go, waterfall rock. Okay, these waterfall rocks, in my opinion, work pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to use them. So they already somewhat show, like, kind of have a hint there's a flow of water going on. So that's kind of nice. All right, we're going to strategically place them around. Okay, let's bring them up a layer so they're not below any of those rocks. Let's put a couple of them down. I think there should be a couple, and I will show you how to put waterfalls as well on this. Let's just do a couple of those real quick. Put one there, and you're going to want to make sure it's below that stamp like this because the waterfall's not above, just to let you know. And I'll go ahead and piece a couple of these together. Okay, so there's just one little, this is technically called a rock shelf. It's not a full-on waterfall, but there are rock shelves, and they create these little tiny little falls, okay? And there's usually a couple of them within an area. So I'll put a bunch of them down like this, and if they're a little too bright, you can change the opacity. I'll show you a neat little trick how to fix that, by the way. Let's drop that down one more. There we go. Okay. And so you've got this rock here. We're going to place maybe one more rock over here. Okay, and I definitely recommend you place some of them over. So let's go up a couple and put them over like this. Because rock shelves have little random rocks. So that actually happens quite often. Let's add one more right here. Okay. There should be fine. Okay. Actually, that one's close to that, so let's move it over to this side. There we go. Okay. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to add these kind of wakes. I'm trying to remember what the name of them are. I don't see them in the water. I forgot where they're at, and I forgot what they're called. Let me see if I can find them. We're going to go ahead and take a look. Here they are right here. I think it's called ship waves. Okay, so these ship waves work great to show the flow or direction. Okay, let's go ahead and pick a little bit smaller one. Go with this one. Okay, and we're going to make sure it goes up. So we're going to put these by the rocks. So there's one right there. Actually, let's go with this one right here. This might look a little better. And I'm going to want to make sure to also make sure it's a layer below the rock, by the way, not above it. Okay, we want to go down a layer. There we go. Okay. So what we're doing is we're kind of creating this sense of direction by adding these kind of ship wakes. Super useful. I'm working with a really tight space, so it's kind of hard to do this. And we're going to do a lot more than just this too, trust me. There's a lot to go on, so let's go ahead and add that one there. Okay, so you have a couple of these, which is nice. And there's one other texture that works super, super great. Press the B key, press the F key, type in snow, okay? Now, we're gonna use this snow alpha to represent turbulence or white water, okay? And when you're doing this, you definitely wanna drop the opacity and you're gonna wanna change the size. Let's go with really small, like that, okay? Now, where do you put white water? Where do you put that kind of stuff at, where you're going to put it where there's going to be disturbance. So this waterfall is a great example. So you would go ahead and just apply like this, and let's actually go up a little bit more. We want to see it a little bit better. Okay, and you're going to apply this snow texture like this. Okay, and you're going to be going out a little bit like this. So this creates this really nice turbulence kind of effect, which is super nice. In fact, I'm going to go up even more because I like it so much. It looks so good. We'll add some more. Okay, along the edges is fine. Where this rock is fine. Okay, you can even have it carrying along a little more this ledge here, and you definitely want to add it here. Okay, so you got this nice, this nice turbulence is going on here. Perfect, it's coming together. Oh, I love making rivers. A little bit of turbulence here, and we're going to put it along this ledge as well. Okay, this water is interacting with that ledge. That looks fine. There we go. Coming along nicely. So we got a nice little river here going on, which is super nice. I'm just going to add a little bit more white because I just kind of want, I don't want these white waterfalls to be so dominant. So creating more of these rapids will break up that. So that's kind of nice. Okay, I think we're coming along really nicely. 10 minutes after the designated time, we're just going to add just a little bit more, and then we're going to add one more. We're going to go ahead and add those fey lights just to add some sparkles in the water. So we'll do that as well. Let's go ahead and full opacity it up. Add some there, add some here. Okay, and the last step is to add some waves. Okay, I mean, honestly, I think this is kind of enough. It seems very clear to me which way the river is going. It's going this way. Okay, but you can add waves as well. I'm just going to cut it short because I think this is good. But let's take a step back. Let's save, and I'm going to go ahead and open the map in 4K so that we can kind of take a look at what it looks like in a higher resolution, and then we'll conclude the stream. Okay. Okay, and we'll go ahead and close out. I really like the way this turned out. There's so much more that you can do. You can add vines and decorate this with green, and there's just so much that you can do. So we've saved it. We're going to go return to the maps, and I'm going to quickly open it up in Ultra 4K. If you don't know how to open things up in a different resolution, or if you don't know what resolution it in, it will tell you. So right here, we've looked at this map. It's not in 4K because it usually shows up here. So you've got Fantasy Regional HD. It tells you what style it's in. Okay, you're going to click these three dots right here. You're going to click Open Resolution. Make sure you kind of read this little disclaimer here. By the way, it's kind of important because this is still very experimental. Okay, you click Ultra 4K and then you click Open Map at 4K. Just know that if you open a map in 4K, it will load much, much slower, okay? Because your editing resolution has gone up, has doubled from 2K to 4K, so you're gonna expect some lag, expect a slow load time, even expect slow save times, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. I would recommend that you edit in 2K if you have a low performance machine or slower internet. And if you have really, really bad internet connection and a kind of a low end machine, I recommend you edit in 1K. Okay, 4K is for strong machines, good internet connection. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. So, but for most of you, I think 2K is acceptable. And those of you who have the machines and the internet to handle 4K, 4K is a blast. I have a good machine, but 4K still lags quite a bit, even for me. Gonna give it a minute to load. It's gonna take a hot minute, I can guarantee it. Hey, no problem. Thank you, Busy Bee, for being here. Appreciate you. It's going to take a minute. Let's take a look at this thing in 4K, and I'll also be able to be sure to save this map and put it on my profile, and you can clone and edit it if you just want to kind of look over it. Don't forget that this video is up for playback. As soon as we turn it off, it will be available. You can go ahead and check it out. Okay. Also, I definitely recommend that you check out our Discord server. It is awesome. We have an incredible community there. Everyone is super, super helpful. It's a very safe and friendly place. So if you haven't checked that out, go do that. I do believe that there is a link to the Discord server in the comments or in the live chat, I believe. So please go check that out. Also check out my profile. That is in the comments as well. I believe the live chat. So go check that out. So here it is in 4K, all its 4K beauty. Things are not quite as blurry, so we can kind of take a look at our hill. We've kind of created this simple hill right here. We've got a nice tundra. We've got a forest with our glade. We've got a nice little swamp here, and we could have done this differently. I'll look at that with some different techniques. We'll go in order here. A nice desert with a nice little oasis here. We've got a jungle here. You can kind of see the forest floor a little bit. I hope that this technique of creating the shadow of the tree, and by the way, I didn't come up with the technique. I don't remember who did, but it might have been Philip, might have been Jeremy, I'm not sure, so I don't want to take credit for it, but it's a great technique. This whole using a shadow for the foliage works great. Totally recommend it. Grassland, ridiculously simple. And finally, your river. And again, I just want to emphasize, Jeremy Forever has a great tutorial video on rivers, and that's something that I should probably look into too. So hey, thank you very much for everyone for watching. Okay, really appreciate it. Please subscribe, like the video, click the alarm button or the alert button if you want to see more videos like this one to kind of stay in touch on what we're doing. There is a schedule, there is a stream schedule. If you go to the Discord and go to the stream announcements, there is a calendar there with all the dates and times of videos and streams, both on YouTube and on Discord. Okay, so go please check that out. Thank you again so much for watching, and everybody, merry map making. Okay.